Welcome to Slash Forward. Here's a question for you. Must a child suffer the sins of the father? In a poetic sense, I suppose that's up for debate. However, in a literal sense, it really just depends on whether one's father's former slighted schoolmates chooses to directly take action to make it happen. This is the conflict examined in the 2019 film Ma. When a group of teens innocently try to get an adult to buy them some booze, they fail to realize that their interaction with the Samaritan who ultimately helps them results in a sort of a spiritual rebirth for her. Driven by the trauma of a disgusting prank the popular kids played on her in high school, she sets out to show them a good time and, in the process, entangle them, unwittingly, in her machinations of generational revenge. Is it ever a good idea to befriend your parents' friends' kids? Share your thoughts in the comments below. You never know when that type of feedback hits at just the right time to help someone in need. Let's get to it. We open on a peaceful and serene homecoming of sorts, as Erica drives with her daughter Maggie back toward her quiet hometown. Just a couple of gals looking for a fresh start in a familiar place. Unfortunately, they arrived on the first day of school, apparently, so Maggie has to go in raw with no idea where her class is located. This leads to a chance encounter with Jeannie, the school's signature sickly student. Other than this positive interaction, there's not a lot of good going on as Maggie finds herself constantly on the outside looking in. Although this may be partially of her own making, as she's greeted by Haley and her gang of misfits, but turns down an offer made in good faith to accompany them to a party because she already has plans to attend a music festival with her mom. But then we find that with the new job comes new additional responsibilities, and Erica has to cover for a coworker. With the festival a no-go, Maggie considers spending the evening alone. But then she chooses life, and after a short text, she finds herself in the totally legit party van with Haley and the boys. Turns out the soiree was also canceled, but they have backup plans, drive around and get wasted. First, they have to acquire the alcohol, but Darrell strikes out miserably. In a trial by fire, they send Maggie out to do work. She does equally poorly until Sue-Ann sees that it's a whole group of teens she'd be helping, and they're going out to the old rock pile, a favorite drinking spot from even when she was a youngster. Reminiscing over the debauchery of youth, she hooks them up. The gang then goes about their business, completely oblivious to the fact that the Hawkins security decal on the van was instantly recognizable to Sue-Ann, and after confirming their identities through social media, she makes an anonymous call to Ben Hawkins, interrupting his cooling tower blowy to let him know what his boy Andy is up to. Later, after they're all lightly toasted, the Popo roll up to assert some authority and control. Officer Granger lets Andy know he was to arrest him to teach him a lesson.
I played football with your dad in high school, and he's a dick.
But the bonds of high school football don't run as deep in this town, so he gives them a chance to clear out before coming back to put in his official report. When Maggie gets home, her mom's waiting, and while she's happy Maggie's making friends, she also wants her to be safe. Seems reasonable, but Maggie gets so sassy about it. The next day finds Erica dropping off Louie at the vet, creating an important connection point for Sue-Ann. Later, Maggie can't wait to run off with her new peer group, so they can do what they do, which is to enlist the help of Sue-Ann to score them some booze. But with the threat of prying eyes, she insists they follow her to a second location to complete the handoff, which is sketchy. Turns out her number one concern is their personal safety, and this prompts her to invite them to use her basement for their delinquency. Darrell is pretty much the only one who recognizes how unusual this is, so he's easily outvoted and they venture into the bowels of her house. Here, there are only 3 rules. No blaspheming, no spitting on the floor, and no going upstairs. Darrell then gives her the nickname Ma as she goes up for snacks, and returns with some pizza rolls. Upon her return, Chaz starts noting some general improvements that could be made to the dank, musty basement, but he does so in an oddly intimidating manner. But Ma matches his energy by pulling out a hidden revolver and forcing him to strip. As the tension reaches a crescendo, she reveals this was all just a really fantastic prank, and the gun doesn't even work, you stupid bitches. This episode is forgotten and forgiven by the end of the night, when pretty much all of them except sober Andy are staggering back out to the car. With their safety ensured, she sees them off, an act that induces a flashback to the olden days when she was unexpectedly invited to a shindig with the Populars. Maggie arrives home totally trashed and soaks in one last view of Andy's delicious face before bed. The next day, Ma gets to work setting up a more inviting party pad. She also takes a little time to research Erica and find out where she works. She maybe goes looking for a chance chance encounter but is beat to the punch when Erica runs across Mercedes, who is there with Ben and disparages Erica before being booted due to her sloppy drunkenness. Not long after, Erica and her coworker Stu are heading out for a big training weekend, leaving Maggie with a little money and a ton of freedom. In a brief interlude, we see Ma's general reconnaissance continues as she clocks Mercedes' jogging path and then visits the school to ensure the kids find the box she left for them. They do, and it's a party box, the opening of which is timed to a message they all receive on their private numbers, inviting them to come over. This invite apparently applied to everyone in town. They're impressed by Ma's improvements, her openness to honest feedback, and her new upbeat attitude. Before long, they're getting turned up, dancing as if they were robots, putting on a sex clinic, and doing all sorts of other popular dance steps. These good times result in another flashback where Ma finds herself at the rock pile, being brought into the fold. She goes into a 1,000-yard stare but is snapped out of it with a round of drinks. She insists that alcohol doesn't settle well with her, but they pressure her into it, as friends do. A loud banging noise then summons her upstairs. She blames it on the ice machine, but you don't give ice machines shots of medication. At about this time, Haley reveals that she has an urgent need to urinate. With the bathroom indefinitely occupied, the girls head upstairs. While waiting on her friend, Maggie hears some sort of contentious conversation upstairs. This prompts her to bust in and insist Haley cut it off so they can go. On their way down, they're confronted by Ma, and the experience taints their mood, prompting them to insist they all go. Upset by this turn, Ma attempts to find peace and serenity by cutting out photos of herself. A perfectly sane pastime. The next morning, Maggie and Haley wake up to an abundance of apologies from Ma. They resolve to put this behind them, which is easy as Andy lays down a distraction by calling Maggie over and bestowing her with the privilege of becoming his girl, an act he was nervous about and about which he shares his entire thought process. The whole crew is super stoked about their budding romance, and they determine that celebratory pizza is in order, but they find they have some unfinished business with Ma, who confronts them at school and attempts to apologize by inviting them over for a kegger. But they've had enough, and even Chaz claims to have too much homework to party, a clear lie. Haley gets a bit too familiar with Ma, leading to another tense moment that basically undermines all her previous apologies. Not one to pass up a good thing, Ma looks for satisfaction in another group of youngsters, but they don't treat her nearly as well. Meanwhile, Erica has returned, and after only a couple of questions, Maggie excitedly spills the beans about Andy. Soon enough, our protagonists find themselves obligated to return to the basement in celebration of one of their school chums' birthdays. Ma takes this opportunity to offer up some dating advice to Maggie, and is again scorned. You do remember when she pulled a gun on your boy, correct? But Ma brushes this one off and instead comes back bearing shots for everyone. The next thing Maggie knows, she's waking up at her house, banged up and missing her special earrings. Andy confirms that she got super sloppy and he had to carry her home. Feeling off about the whole situation, Maggie delivers the first ultimatum of their relationship by suggesting they both steer clear of Ma's house. At the veterinary clinic, it's revealed that Ma is engaged in some sort of reverse theft situation with the diazepam, a secret donation of sorts. And then some funny business on the couch is interrupted by the return of Maggie's mom, a teenage classic. They try to play it off, but she's savvy. Afterward, they end up having a nice conversation and connect over Erica running in some of the same high school groups with Andy's dad. Then Andy's phone starts blowing up. At school the next day, they're all having the same problem. So Haley hops on live like a boomer and tells everyone to block that crazy bitch. This unfortunately ruins her petty, causes her to dwell on it all afternoon, which sends her into a tailspin of old memories that revolve around that time she was lured into a dark room at school. She then settles on getting a new number so she can inundate them with more messages, finally resorting to begging them to meet her at the rock pile after school. When they get there, she reveals that she's been sick with the cancer, and her erratic behavior is an unfortunate side effect of the harsh medications. This essentially secures their sympathy, except for Haley, who notices that she's wearing Stephanie's bracelet. She summons Maggie to share this info, and they both confirm they have important jewelry that's gone missing recently. Taking it upon themselves, they begin a standard stakeout that quickly devolves into a B&E. They enter the upstairs gate and find her shrine to the kids, which is pretty weird. Meanwhile, Ben arrives looking for a new vet and instantly reminisces with her about how crazy high school was for all of them, and he offers to catch up with her at the pub after she gets off work. Then, in a flashback, we learn that it was Ben who played off her romantic interest in him to invite her into the dark closet that day. While back at the house, they get their asses pranked by Jeannie, who they learn is Ma's daughter, and also that she can walk. She's just not supposed to. Sue-Ann keeps her locked away due to her sick spine and frail countenance. As Ma then rolls up, they all agree to keep this as a girl's only secret before Maggie and Haley go full ninja and manage to slip out right from under her nose. Ma had just stopped home to get gussied up for her meeting with Ben and to give Jeannie her afternoon compliance medication. As she waits, she flashes back again to the time Mercedes taught her about fellatio, and then Ben arrives. The convo starts out cordially enough until Ben unexpectedly whips out a personal tracker. It's one of the tools of his trade, and he keeps them on all of his vehicles, so he knows his boy's been hanging out at her house. He suspects she's attempting revenge for some past transgression and warns her of the violence to come if she doesn't give it up. Meanwhile, Maggie has described to Andy their findings in Ma's checkered past with all their parents. It's damning for sure, but sweet summer Andy still has a soft spot for her, having lost his own mom to cancer a few years back. Maggie lets it go for now, but when she gets home, Sue-Ann is there under the auspices of checking up on their doggo and pretending like she and Maggie have never met, allowing for some deeply satisfying entendres.
There's probably something wrong with me.
She exits into a flashback of a dark room filled with wet sounds and moaning. She emerges and is surprised to find the whole crew there since there aren't even that many bathroom passes, and Ben is front and center. Turns out she was tricked to go in there with some nerdlinger rather than her crush. Absolutely brutal. Carried through by her rage, she takes a mental health detour into the pathway of Mercedes' daily jog. Later that night, Maggie hears a yelp out back and goes to check on Louis. When she finds him, he has a bloody paw. They get him inside, but he seems to be lethargic, so Erica goes to call the vet, which forces Maggie to come clean about her history with Ma. Unfortunately, this revelation gets her banished to her room forever. Back at Ma's house, Ben arrives following the trail of his tracker, and he enters the house aggressive as ever, which actually causes him to fall right into her web. He wakes up in a precarious, albeit sensual position, apparently getting a transfusion from a dog for what we presume to be some metaphorical reason. After filling him in on the situation, she puts him back to sleep. Back in her room, Maggie is enticed to action by a taunting video that shows Andy at the house and Ma wearing her special earrings. She gets there fairly quickly and finds the crew are already there, enjoying the special punch and acting crazy. As Maggie tries to fill them in on the gravity of the situation, Ma puts Jeannie to bed upstairs so she can focus on achieving her goals. She starts by locking them in and giving them time to pass out from her tainted punch. But Maggie is determined to escape. She runs all the way upstairs hoping to find an exit, but instead finds a naked, bloody man. This distraction allows Ma to inject her. Erica wakes up the next day and calls Maggie to come with her on errand day. She gets no response, and when she finds her room empty, she knows what's up. Of course, Maggie then wakes up really wishing she was running errands right now, because all her friends are passed out and Ma is performing weird experiments on them. Some of them are just downright savage, while others are intended to be ironic, but all of them are just for funsies. Then Andy, the precious one, wakes up. She's polite enough to disconnect his leash, but in his gratitude, he misreads the situation somewhat and gets gutted. The fun is paused momentarily when Officer Granger arrives. He's responding to a call from a concerned parent, but Ma claims to be alone in the house. They've almost played it off, but then Maggie screams from the basement, requiring Ma to blast him in the chest. When she gets back downstairs, she enlists Maggie's help in getting them set up for a group photo. I mean, the lighting was just right and she got a great angle, but Ma repays her by stringing her up on the rafters. They're saved momentarily when Jeannie arrives to knock out her mother, but then endangered again when a fire starts. Luckily, they're able to get everyone untied before they suck in too much smoke. Erica arrives with Stu to help the kids out of the cellar, and after a brief standoff, the two mothers agree to go their separate ways. But when Sue-Ann calls Maggie weak and compares her to her mother, she really feels that. Once the deed is done and Maggie has sufficiently explored her primal nature, they all then leave Ma to wander the wreckage of her burning house. She uses this time to drag herself upstairs and get roasted alongside her beloved. I remember being really sucked in by the trailer they cut for this movie prior to its release. It looked like a tense, constantly escalating psychological thriller. The end result didn't quite live up to that, although I did enjoy it more during this second viewing. Ultimately, I think the theme of her taking revenge on the parents through their kids, which was the central thrust of the entire movie, wasn't really explored in much depth, which is strange. They had a great build-up in the form of the flashbacks that were sprinkled sprinkled in throughout the movie, but the rest of the movie sort of plodded along, and the psychological part falls flat. This is another film where it feels like there are too many things happening in small bursts all over the place, which diminishes any sense of cohesion or momentum, making the ending feel somewhat slapped together. With that said, it was interesting to see Octavia Spencer in this type of role, and the rest of the movie was cast well throughout. They also did a really good job with the teenage friend group. The initial vibe seemed like a fish out of water meets the mean popular girl, and pines for the dreamy boy who's too wrapped up in appearances to split from his friend group type drama. But it ended up being new girl takes a chance and meets some solid friends who all seem to get along together despite their differences. Also, their differences are not leveraged to create unnecessary drama. Overall, my impression of this movie was that it was fun but mediocre. Before we go, I'd like to give a huge thanks to my donors, memorialized in the Hall of Headshots. I have a website set up where you can support the channel through donations or merch. Any donation unlocks uncensored movie reviews of Life Force, Under the Skin, and Possessor, with others to be added over time. And if you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.